So, Berto, we did an episode a little bit ago on QAnon, and I asked for follow-up questions. So let's read those. And if we have time, we'll go to some emails as well. What do you say?
Let's do it.
This is the Psychology in Seattle podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor.
My name is Humberto Castañeda, and I build one-legged tables.
People, so this is someone emailing in. People seem to get into QAnon and trust it over members of their own family, their close friends, etc. What qualities of QAnon lead people to trust memes instead of the real people in their lives, Berto?
Yeah, that's interesting. But I don't know that it's, I think this could have happened with different, it didn't have to be this specific of a cult or of a belief system. But there are some things about it, like universally, people are like, hey, harming kids is bad. Yeah, like we shouldn't be abusing kids. So that already is something that's hard to argue against. You even remember when they were interviewing the president and it's like, they think that you're trying to save children from being abducted and killed. And then he's like, well, is that supposed to be a bad thing? Right? Like it's already like, oh yeah, that's a good cause. That's one thing. And then the other thing is we all grew up with movies and books and everything about secrets and government spies and all these things. And there's a level of James Bond intrigue to this thing, You have these super secret, high level clearance agents disclosing information and you can be part of. So there's the same thing that makes people like video games and like mystery shows and all these things that I think appeals. And lastly, it's a community that is large, and so you feel like you're part of a community. So then why you would trust that above your family member? I think people trust a lot of things over their family members. There's all sorts of things that they're into that their family members don't approve of.
Right. Yeah. So, and I could see, emailer, why it would look like that. Like, why would you just believe a meme over me? There's me and there's memes. So, why are you believing memes over me? It's way more than that. The people who were into QAnon fully were, it wasn't just memes, it was articles and discussions and support among people. And as you say, Berto, building off centuries of ideas that are totally infused in our culture about good versus evil and demons and stuff. Other factors that we listed in the last episode were fear. QAnon infused, 100% fear all the time. Social media obviously is a big factor. 30 years ago, if you wanted to know anything about a conspiracy theory, you'd have to go to the library. Most people didn't go to the library.
Right. and now you just open your phone.
Right. So that's another thing.
Oh, and by the way, in addition to the fear, there is an answer. Don't worry. Right. There is a plan.
Right. I will create something for you to be afraid of that doesn't exist and create an answer that also doesn't exist.
And you can only get the answer from here.
Right. Something to do because everyone's bored, and there's a lot more prevalence than the pandemic. And I think we underappreciate how bored and stuck in the house we all were in April of 2020, right? What I labeled as Christian energy, meaning that there are Christians and other religions for that matter in Western society that have a lot of dogma around demons and devils are right around the corner. Sermons, you could go to sermons because that's the main kind of ideological push of any kind of congregation meeting at church on Sunday.
Yeah.
You could have a minister that talks about demons and devils every week for like 5 years. That could just, the devil is around the corner. Your uncle who is an atheist has been, tempted by the devil, just devil, demon, angel, and this, conspiracy theory tapped into that energy.
And this didn't come out of a vacuum. Like, it wasn't like we had no inputs into the system until 2 years ago. We have decades of radio shows and then internet shows doing preambles to all of this, right? Saying it's all a conspiracy. Don't trust the government. You can't do this. The powers that be are doing this. The powers that be are doing that. I infiltrated such a, like these things have been around.
Yeah.
And so now it's a lot of those same people that follow those things are ripe for the next thing.
Right. Also, you have distrust building in our society. You could blame that partially on some political figures or just, I don't know, distrust building. You also have the need for community. People have a need for an in-group. We want, and to be in the in-group of QAnon, you had to believe certain things. But if you believed in certain things, the thing that I learned when I was treating a lot of teenagers was there were two groups that I found this to be true of: gang members and also like the bad kids of a school.
Okay.
And the phenomenon was the same, was that if you are in a group and you feel alienated and alone and isolated, one of the fastest routes to group acceptance is gangs or the bad kids.
Gangs or the bad kids.
Yeah, because to me, and I'll stay away from gangs, as it's kind of not as common, but the bad kids, all you got to do is smoke a cigarette behind the gym.
Sure.
All you got to do is tag the toilet in the bathroom. All you got to do is tell the history teacher to fuck off, and you get detention, and you're one of the bad kids.
There's a low barrier to entry.
Right. So, and all you got to do is to stay in the group is to be a bad kid.
Yeah. Smoke
cigarettes, smoke pot, get kicked out, get suspended, don't do your homework. And I found a lot of kids who were, doing well in school prior, but they were isolated, they were alone, they were looking for a group, and they found the bad kids. And suddenly their entire world and all their motivation, flipped on its head.
Yeah.
So, when QAnon comes along and you're isolated, you don't know what to do, all you got to do is believe in these things and say these things, and we will, because the other people in the group are also alone and isolated, and they're also desperate for indications of loyalty.
Right. So that's a really great point. You don't have to go through some elaborate initiation, proof of income, proof of nothing. You just simply have to say, I believe.
Right. Think about how you and I and our group of friends are friends.
Yeah.
We had to slowly, over years and years, invite you to things, show up to things, laugh at jokes that aren't funny.
Make up a fake personality that makes pun jokes that is not a real person.
It's tough work. Yeah. And if you don't have the luxury of time, or you're insecure,
pretend to want to do a podcast for 13 years.
it's kind of like, because I'm in the Dungeons and Dragons world, and there's a lot of socially challenged people in that group. Not always, but particularly in the past. And the entry into the group is Dungeons and Dragons.
Right.
There's a rule set. You study that thing, and you can enter the group. And now you have a group of dudes you can play every week with.
And there's instructions. If you can follow these instructions, you're in.
Right. The problem was, for someone that's not socially challenged, I'll just never forget, these guys, we played together for, I don't know, months. And I walk in and I'm like jazzed to play. I'm like, hey. And no one even looked up from their books to acknowledge I had walked into the room.
Oh, no.
Not because they hated me, because they don't have, I don't know whatever it is, to just look up and go, hey, hey, Kirk, just acknowledge that I walked in. I just remember thinking, like, I do this for socializing and gaming, but anyway, so that's another reason. Another reason is that it's fun. There were, a lot of fun elements to the QAnon mystery game. Yeah. There are cult elements, obviously mental illness. Those who are suffering from paranoid schizophrenia or other kinds of things are more susceptible to these fantastical ideas. Trauma, meaning that you can, trauma makes you more susceptible to conspiracy theories, but also makes you more likely to see authority as a threat, and any kind of idea around that helps. There's evolutionary psychology ideas. There's personality, cognitive, of course. But anyway, next person wrote in, Gita, who I think has been with us a long time, says, when Trump was elected to president in 2016, I remember a spokesperson started to talk about alternative facts. Trump himself wants to rewrite history from time to time. Words matter, and I don't think it is coincidence that conspiracy theories rise in a time when truth is questioned from the leadership of a country. Has there been any studies about educational levels among those who believe in conspiracy theories? Berto, what do you think?
I don't know if there's been studies. I do know that, let's say, anecdotally, I know that some of the people in my life that subscribe to some of these and other conspiracy theories happened to not have a higher level education. They didn't go to college, but that's just my little circle of, very small sample set. I have no idea in broader terms. I will say that it's probably true for things like flat earth and a few other things, that if you don't actually have an education in those fields, it might be easier for you to misunderstand the science and things like that.
Yeah.
So
that, and if you, like me, are a scientist and have worked alongside scientists, then scientists are demystified and humanized and generally trusted, because the scientists that I've worked with are desperate for doing ethical, honorable work.
Right.
The idea that they would, one, fudge numbers, and two, be seen as someone who is biased as a researcher is, one of the worst things you could. But I hang out with a particular brand of non-colonializing, non-sexist, non-privileged. The researchers that I work with read, like, half of the readings that they read are like how not to be biased as a researcher based on your culture.
Yeah.
Not every culture, not every scientific pocket is like that. But anyway, my point is that education is associated with critical thinking, but it is not a guarantee. You can have 5 doctorates and still believe in some wackadoo things.
We take so many things for granted. I think it's a human thing to do, but nowadays we are allowed the biggest benefit of taking things for granted. Because think about, people are like, something about evolution, right? Like, evolution doesn't exist or whatever. We have people in history who devoted decades in some remote, far location, painstakingly drawing creatures and writing down little notes about them and then comparing one to the other, and like a life work. And then, you have scientists today, like they went to school for it. They spend day after day. Most of the things they try never succeed. That's what but we have the luxury of sitting here and going like, the internet doesn't exist, and you're posting it on the internet, and it's because most of us, I include myself, like, I don't know what, like, I've been thinking about this. I installed this game called Farm Simulator, and
on your phone?
On my PC. It's like a big ass game where you actually like have to drive the tractors into all the things.
Right. Yeah. Those strategies, those kinds of games are appealing to me. There's like prison simulator,
right,
and there's like city simulators, and
well, I have been realizing through playing this how little I understand about how farming works, and I'm like, well, you don't really need these huge machines.
Yeah, that's one of the fun things about these. What did I play recently? A Civil War simulation.
Oh, wow.
Where it's really micro.
Okay.
Every colonel has a name,
right,
and associated with history. And when you muster troops, it takes months just to gather the troops. You have to feed them. Right. There's like supply chains. And then in battle, there's morale and ammunition and tiredness. It gets real specific. And I learned so much about the Civil War through this game.
So you rewind the clock, a couple months before I installed this game, and we're having one of these discussions, and something about farms comes up, and I'm going to rattle off a whole bunch of things as if I know what the hell I'm talking about. Now, because I've played the game for just a little bit, now I think I know something about farms, but I guarantee you I know still nothing about farms.
Yeah, Dunning-Kruger. So people And research does show that people that don't know much about politics are more susceptible to QAnon beliefs. Yeah. Because if you know, and I've seen this so many times, and I've seen it myself. I mean, I don't have a specific example, but I remember at like 19 years of age having extreme opinions about politics, and I guarantee you, and the more I've learned about politics, as you know, what do we mean by that? But you know, politics is a broad subject. The more I've learned over the past 30 years, you'll often hear me say, I know enough to know that I don't know, because when I talk to actual experts in politics, like not internet people or even journalists, I'm talking like people that are on the inside. Like I talked about Wyatt, who died in Afghanistan, and he made himself, because he went to Afghanistan and Iraq several times and was a smart dude and educated himself and was on the ground actually doing the war things and the training of the Afghani troops there, the army, and knew about George Bush and knew about the motivations and about, you know, what the generals are after and the history of these kinds of things like Vietnam. He knew about all that stuff. And when I would talk, and I had my ideas, like, you know, the typical sort of layperson notion, and he would, I don't even remember what he told me, but I just remember just fascinated with all the things he would tell me, you know, to the point where whenever I went out with him, I would just listen to him, not only about politics, because he knew so much more about, and it was completely divorced from Republican or Democrat. He's like, this has nothing to do with Republicans. It has nothing to do with Democrats. This has to do with America and its interests. And Democrats and Republicans are both stupid and smart about this. And here, let me tell you, like, and he would lay it all out. And not only that, but I would also listen to him tell me about battles that he would have. Yeah. And the thing, because we've seen movies about battles, but the battles that he had, it just sounded like nothing I'd seen in a movie, is the point. And so, Dunning-Kruger, it's a real thing.
What's funny is I believe that the Dunning-Kruger effect has been extremely useful to human civilization, because you kind of imagine if you didn't have young humans who believed they had a good idea, then we wouldn't have progress, right? But the difference is, it used to be you just roll all those dice. Most of those dice don't go anywhere. But now we have these tools that accidentally make it so that anyone can roll one of these dice, and other people go, oh yeah, I like that roll. Right. Let's go with that.
Right. Like if you are training to become an ironsmith and you're like, I can do it. It gives you a little bit of confidence to quote unquote forge ahead, if you will. Yeah. But when we're talking about geopolitical, historical, cultural phenomena that no one understands, because they involve, you know, systems and upon systems, and people are voting thereof, and we have politicians that equally don't know what's happening and making decisions. That's pretty rough.
Like I believe, you know, we've been using all this copper. I believe we can mix the copper with something else. You're stupid. You don't know what you're talking about. Well, I'm going to try it. And then you try to mix it with gold. It doesn't work. The other idiot, I believe we can do it. It doesn't work. Finally, someone does it, and it turns into bronze.
You know what you add to copper to make bronze, because you've played Valheim.
I have. And you add zinc, right?
Nope.
No, you add tin. Tin.
Tin.
Oh, tin, yeah. Okay, sorry. But anyways, the point is,
Berto and I played a video game where there was a lot of mining of copper and tin.
And tin, right. But the point is that you need those crazy ideas, and most of them don't work. But now you can post online. I believe if you mix copper and gold, it turns into something wonderful. And a whole bunch of people are going to go, that's a wonderful idea. I believe it too.
Yeah. Next person. I have this hypothesis of humor being one of the major elements that attract new QAnon members. Humor. I think some people might initially find this community stupid and funny, but the more they read about QAnon for entertainment purposes, the more they feel familiar with the community and the beliefs they have. They might eventually become one of them. What are your thoughts on this, Berto?
That one I find a little harder to understand, because...
Oh, really? I thought you would agree, because when you were talking about 4chan and 8chan, you were saying that was the culture of like you play along in a humorous way.
Yes.
But you can't see someone transitioning from that to a believer.
No, I see what you're saying there. I guess what I was thinking was, yeah, I guess maybe it's knowing what I know now about how dangerous this all is, I can't see the humor in it. Number one. But
before it became dangerous, say 4 years ago, could you imagine a 25-year-old Berto laughing about it?
Okay. Now I understand, and I agree, because I did this with Flat Earth. I joined the Flat Earth thing on Facebook, and I would love to watch those posts, and I would make very ironic replies, and I thought it was hilarious. I eventually abandoned it because I started realizing how many people really believe it.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, I'm just adding fuel to this weird fire. I'm going to back out. Homer Simpson style. So I do think I understand that now. You're right.
If you didn't know any better,
you could be like, oh, what the heck is this? Oh my gosh, this is so ridiculous.
And then it gets into your head.
But wait a minute. Now that's a little funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that.
Another person, I'm glad you covered QAnon. I think it is important for therapists to learn about this group. I was raised in a fundamentalist household that taught me these sorts of things are true.
Yeah.
And it's hard to unlearn. How do you think you might approach this kind of childhood trauma in patience? Well, to answer that question, the broader question is, people that come to me who have been indoctrinated into a belief system, what do I do? Well, depends on the goals. I've had people come to me who were, and I won't identify their religion, but it's a very fundamentalist religion in the United States. It's not relatively common, but it's common enough that you've probably heard about it. And it was a couple, and they hated each other.
Oh.
But their religion was staunch about can't get divorced, can't even separate. Like, you are bound together by
together forever and ever to part.
And they came to me, and I was like, it tasked me with fixing their marriage. I worked on it. Nothing ever worked because one or both of them had all 10 toes out of the door years ago. Maybe never even wanted to be in the relationship to begin with. Man. And so then it switched to how can we get along? And in my head, I'm like, well, there's this thing called divorce that will solve all your problems.
The D word. Oh no.
You don't have to live together, because that was the thing. They lived together.
Yeah.
And that was not an option, so to me, from the outside looking in on this cultural pocket, I'm like, this is my culture. You have an unreasonable dogma element that is preventing you from reaching your full potential as a human being. That is arbitrary, ridiculous, and not shared by most religions in the United States. So there's no need to have that.
Yeah.
You could change, but culturally speaking, to them, that was impossible. That would be essentially, and there were people in their church who had done that and were excommunicated.
Yeah.
And were, deemed going to hell, essentially.
Now, are they forced to also live together? Couldn't they just stay married but not live together?
No, they were.
Man.
Yeah. And so I, tried to introduce flexibility there.
Yeah.
And maybe even question if their religion was best for them. But, I can't obviously.
That's hard.
And so in the end, I just, that's their religion. We got to make this work. And, I did the best I could within those bounds.
Yeah.
So it's case by case. There are some people that'll come to us having left the cult, if you will, and are asking to be transitioned out. That's a different approach. So, it really just depends. Someone could come to me. I could have clients who are QAnon. I know I don't now, but, I could have in the past maybe, or someone similar. And I wouldn't know because the topic would never come up.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about other things that they're bringing to me.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Another email here, anonymous listener, longer email here. I'm currently listening to your QAnon episode. I'm more conspiracy leaning and right leaning than you are. So I was curious to see what your perspectives and if we would align. My opinion of QAnon is that it seemed like an obvious government psyop meant to bolster Trump's support. What's a psyop, Berno?
A psychological operation where they are specifically trying to introduce some element into a population to control them or to influence them in a certain direction. It's like, something the CIA would do. And actually stuff they do, like...
Do you think QAnon was a psyop?
Well, in a sense, it definitely was. The question is by whom, but it certainly got started on purpose.
Right.
Okay, actually, let me soften that slightly. It is possible, like...
Could have been Bannon trying to bolster Trump support, right?
It certainly, but it could also be that that elements of it started as a lark.
Right.
The reason I think it was injected pretty on purpose is because what I think happened was they used an existing mechanism, which are these LOL things on 4chan, which are just for the lulz, blah, blah. But they used that delivery mechanism, but it was a real agent, aka Bannon or someone that was like, hey, let's use this community. Or they are part of that community already. What's hard to tell, though, is what the end game was.
Right.
Because, so you could think, well, no, but the end game was just getting the votes. Yeah, maybe. But at some point, it served its purpose and then they moved off. So it's kind of hard to know. I think it does.
I don't think whoever started it had thought of an end game because they probably thought this would never take off the way it did.
Well, if it was someone like a Bannon, they could have easily thought, hey, listen, the key here is we need to make sure people don't trust anything. Because if they don't trust anything, they'll only trust us. And so, because we're the ones telling them not to trust anything. So that, and so that is possible, but it's hard to know.
Going on. The whole thing had too many movie-like elements. It had the allure of a mystery movie where everyone was trying to crack the code and conquer the bad guys. It was just too good to be true. Meanwhile, Q's cryptic promises never came to pass. I can see how others were swept up in it and probably had a hard time letting go of their beliefs once things started to fall apart. I also support what Berto said about many conspiracies containing seeds of truth, which makes them easier to latch onto. For example, the owner of the Comet Pizza posted incredibly disturbing things on his Instagram and seems like a potential pedophile himself. He's just one person in the Q sphere, but as I'm sure you know, bad people exist. And bad people often find ways to hide their vices and hide behind power. It's a tale as old as time. Chiming in here, Berto, did you know that about the Comet Pizza owner?
Well, so I don't know that about the owner. I think I had mentioned, but if I didn't, I'll mention now. I found some of the stuff in the Podesta emails to be a little weird. I don't know. I also found some of the art that both him and his brother are into to be very weird. But that's why I was saying, hey, look, man, there's all sorts of ways that you can build a conspiracy out of little grains. And so you could say, oh, such and such landed at this airport this one day and this other thing happened. And now you're, connecting dots.
Yeah. And it's similar to, it's anomaly hunting and it's cherry picking. And I can't remember what happened. It was recently where someone was feeding me something along those lines. I can't remember what it was, but maybe it was on Reddit or something. And someone was like, oh, because this happened and then that happened. And then I started as the passive, reader of this stuff, started going, whoa, that is kind of weird. Yeah. And then I looked into it more and I started to see the signs of, oh, wait, actually, it was possibly when we were talking about Ted Bundy in the episode on serial killers, the Dr. Lewis was like, look at the signatures and look at the entity thing.
Right.
And the way they're presenting it in the documentary, I'm like, whoa, maybe he did have dissociative identity disorder. But then I quickly check in with myself and it's like, well, where's all the other evidence?
Yeah.
And that's kind of a stretch, because he could have, myself, for example, I might sign, I don't now, but maybe when I was, I don't know, just a goofball at the age of 19, I might have signed with a nickname here or there.
Yeah.
I might have referred to, this other person. I have a friend who, when he gets really drunk, this isn't his name, but he says Todd comes out, and it's this jerk face. Mm-hmm. He's like, oh yeah, Todd came out last night. Mm-hmm. And who knows what Ted Bundy was referring to, what he was. But I, have the ability to go, well, wait, what's the chance here? I'm seeing some compelling data, but
what's the other data?
But there's an absence of other data that supports this idea that Ted Bundy had dissociative identity disorder. And then the next thought I have is, well, maybe he did have it, but I don't know. We'll probably never know because he's dead. And I don't know, and I don't really care. He probably didn't, given the fact that no one else seemed to see that in him. But I had to make a lot of sort of systemic, I don't know how to say this other than to just say like wise evaluations based on like a lot of data all at once in my head. Right. Whereas if I didn't have that cognitive ability or practice, or someone taught me that along the way, I would just take those pieces of data, and the documentary was clearly trying to make me believe that he had dissociative identity disorder, and I would have walked away going, he clearly has it.
Yeah.
So I think that unless you have that ability, you are helpless against the propaganda that some of these internet players will propagate.
Absolutely. And the explosion from a couple of data points is egregious. For example, you might say, hey, something weird happened in Roswell in the 1940s or 50s, whatever. Something did crash land, it turns out. Okay. Therefore, and then it's in the therefore, right. Like we're already questioning the first premise, but even, let's say, fine, something weird happened. But the therefore goes on to like, the last million years, here's what's been happening.
Yeah. Yeah, the pyramids and going on with the email. I'm generally quite open-minded and also skeptical of power, which is why I don't write off anything until I've had time to learn about it and allow more evidence to unfold. QAnon just never stood up to scrutiny. So just chiming in here, this idea of being skeptical of power and yet not skeptical, and this is not what the emailer is saying, but this idea of like, well, I'm generally skeptical of power. QAnon isn't a power source?
Right.
QAnon is absolutely a power source, Right. So to say like, I question the government, but not Trump, and definitely not QAnon, this just doesn't make any sense.
Right. You would at least want some sort of equal application of scrutiny.
Right. I question the government's claims.
Right.
I question QAnon's claims.
Right.
I question Trump's claims. But of course, that's not how these people think going on. However, I disagree with many people's knee-jerk impulse to dismiss alternative conspiratorial ideas. Conspiracies don't require as much coordination and cooperation as you might think. Many people just follow orders and blindly do what they're told. 2020 has made that blatantly clear. Chiming in here, what do you think they mean by that?
Well, but we got to distinguish. I think it's true that sometimes all it takes for bad things to happen is for some people to get a ball rolling, and then other people do their jobs, and those jobs are done in the way they would have done them. But because the ball that got rolling is a bad ball, the net result is bad. As an example, let's take the pandemic. So the people in charge when the pandemic started in this country didn't know what the heck they were doing, at least many of them. And even the people that should have known what to do got swayed and influenced by those people. But I don't believe there was a conspiracy. I don't believe, oh, I see Trump was in on it from the start. The Chinese paid Trump a sum of money 10 years ago. Like, I'm not making this conspiracy. I could. Imagine all the dots I could connect, right? Or I could do it with Hillary, whoever, right? You pick your... But I don't need to, because the thing I always advocate, and I know you do too, is people are fallible. They are liars.
Especially
they
when...
don't keep secrets.
Especially when you add everyone up. It's almost like
exactly.
If you have 1,000 people in a group that, like the government, for example, you add up all of their shortcomings,
yeah,
and you have a mountain of incompetence. It's additive, right? It's not like you take all of their competence and all of their incompetence. It's like all their incompetence adds up to a chaotic mess of general incompetence.
And look, we actually have peaks inside of the machinery. Like take the Iran-Contra or even more recent scandals and stuff. Are there conspiracies that happen within the government? Yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
As in, this general had a conversation with this senator. They had some agreement to do this one thing. They deployed the troops here. Bad things happen, or unethical, whatever you want to call them. And then no one knew about it on this side of the aisle. And then news gets out. Sure, that was a conspiracy. But then there's levels of these things. First of all, that thing came out. Okay, some don't come out. But when we're saying, worldwide cabals for hundreds of years, and everyone is in line
drinking blood to extend their lives,
and then you're denying it, so you're in on it, and that's where it's like, well,
Oprah Winfrey,
that's a different universe.
Tom Hanks, the Pope. But Berto, what do you mean? So they're like, many people just follow orders and blindly do what they're told. 2020 has made that blatantly clear. What do you think they mean by 2020?
I think they're saying like people just wear their masks because they were told. People just get their injections because they were told.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like. Going on, I think it's because it's human nature to want to trust authority and assume people are working in good faith. Most people are good, but a small minority of power-hungry people are not. These people prey on our good-natured assumptions and get away with a lot before they're caught. As a personal anecdote, my best friend's boyfriend of 5 years was maintaining 4 different long-term relationships at one time. He had everyone fooled. He was also pursuing a career in politics. Just shows you what type of people are transfixed by the idea of gaining power. Yeah, I mean, a dude that is psychopathically lying to 4 different partners. I mean, that's an anomaly right there. Anyway, so just to remind everyone how many people believe this sort of stuff. Berto, I'm just amazed at these percentage points. How many people agree percentage-wise with the following statement? The levers of power are controlled by a cabal of Satan-worshipping pedophiles. Percentage of Americans who believe that statement.
Wasn't it like 13%?
17%.
17%.
23% of Republicans, 7% of Democrats. Yeah. The levers of power are controlled by a cabal of Satan-worshipping pedophiles.
Yeah.
So I would understand if they're like, there's a group of pedophiles who are working behind the scenes, and it's much bigger than you realize. I'd be like, okay, probably not true. There are groups of pedophiles that are out there. So it's not that much to kind of think, well, it's a lot more prevalent. You don't realize you're a sheeple. It's way bigger than you think. Okay. Not only that, but they're Satan worshiping, which is like, why does that have to be in there? Pedophiles don't need Satan to be a pedophile, Right. And to be clear, by pedophiles, we're talking about criminal pedophiles. Right. There are pedophiles that don't actually act on their desire. Right. So they're Satan worshiping.
But by the way, the pedophile part is burying the lead. They are homicidal maniacs,
right?
Murdering and torturing and dismembering and sucking blood. Like,
right.
These are cannibalistic homicidal maniacs.
Right.
The pedophile part is one of those bullet points down below.
So not only Satan worshiping pedophiles, but the levers of power are controlled by a cabal.
Actually,
17%, Berto, of Americans believe that statement to be true.
But this is also very telling, dude. The obsession with the demonization of sexuality makes it so that the first headline is they're pedophiles.
Right.
Never mind that they've been murdering and torturing and
sucking
cannibalizing.
The blood, yeah.
The important part is that they're pedophiles.
Yeah.
Also, here's an example. So you have real life situations where some powerful individuals in Hollywood had been preying for as long as Hollywood has existed on their power, preying on innocent people because of their power. Okay. All right. So that's a reality. And we have learned recently about many of these people. Okay. So from there to Hollywood is run by alien civilizations that prey on the suffering of actors. And they have these, like, and then you make up this thing. Casting couches are actually alien vehicles that transport them to a different dimension.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing we're talking about. Because no one has to believe in a conspiracy to agree that, oh, I see, when you put a little insulated group of powerful people that have unbounded power in that community, a percentage of them are going to abuse that power.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. That's humans.
Right. And we've seen that with, potentially, we don't know, with Prince Andrew and with, who was friends with, what's his face? Who
The Epstein,
Epstein, who is, and we see R. Kelly.
But again, so for the length of human history, we have all the stories about King Louis such and his orgies and the things, and the Roman emperors and their Caligula and stuff. Yeah. This isn't new, right? So you're like, okay, powerful people who are given unlimited funds of money and unlimited power, and basically lack of scrutiny.
And are interested in harming others.
Well, I'm actually backing up for a second. I'm saying, what are they going to do? Well, many of them will do things that might be unethical. Not necessarily have harems of kids.
Insider trading.
All sorts of things, right? Now, many of them will associate with other powerful people. And many of them will be invited to events, functions, parties, things with those people.
Yeah, nepotism.
And out of those, some percentage will start engaging in the same kind of really bad things as the other people. Doesn't need what you don't have to add to that is 10,000 years ago, a serpent bit a thing, and then
or even the next level that they do, which is that they're all in on it, all the Democrats. By the way, it's never Walker Texas Ranger. It's never Ronald Reagan.
It is,
it's
and
always
it's all of them, and they are
the
demons.
Democrats.
And they are demons, and they're conducting satanic rituals.
Yeah.
And they're believing that they're doing adrenochrome to live forever. This is what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
next statement, Berto. Republicans, percentage, believe Donald Trump has been secretly fighting a group of child sex traffickers that include prominent Democrats and Hollywood elites. Percentage of Republicans that believe that statement is true.
It was 25%.
29, close. The elites would soon be swept from power by the coming storm. Total percentage of Americans, Berto.
Total Americans, 12%.
20%.
20%?
Because things have gotten so far off track, true American patriots may have to resort to violence in order to save our country.
Oh, jeez.
Republicans.
25.
28. 8% of Democrats. Let's see. Surveillance chip is placed in the COVID-19 vaccines. Total Americans.
7%.
Close, 9. So I just want to remind everyone about that. Let's take a break, and we get back. Let's purge all this stuff and answer some emails. What do you say, Berto?
Let's do it.
All right, we're back from the break. I have had these emails sitting in this file for months, Berto, so God knows if these emails even apply anymore. But patron Anna from Adelaide, South Australia says, agree or disagree? We really need environmental optimism. Can I offer some constructive criticism on your climate crisis pessimism, Kirk? I'm 27 and would describe myself as having eco-anxiety. At the end of your episode, you became very dark and pessimistic about climate change. Your arguments felt very compelling and incredibly scary to me. I felt myself beginning to spiral into another existential crisis. I can't imagine I'm alone. So I reached for the chapter of The Environmental Optimist by David Boyd. As Boyd acknowledges, climate change is a huge threat facing us all. But there are good things happening. We have already solved many environmental challenges, and we do have a reason to be optimistic. Do you agree optimism is what we need to keep us going? It keeps us from fear, the fear that suppresses our concern for others and causes us to focus on our own interests. As a millennial, the climate crisis terrifies me, but the only thing I know to do is to keep using my little spoon to turn this boat around. But I get overwhelmed and I need a break. When I get overwhelmed and I need a break, I'm going to sip a mojito by that pool and hug some loved ones. Then when I'm better, I'm going to get that little spoon out again. Berto, what do you think?
There's two types of optimism in this world. One type of optimism is, don't worry, we'll figure it out. And by we mean someone, not me. There's another type of optimism, which is, it's serious, it's real, but I'm going to keep trying because that's all we can do. And so that's the kind I am, right? I am like, I don't care how dire it is. We live in a binary decision universe, and I can either choose to do something or not. So I'm going to try to do something. Now, what I think is the risk of the optimism is if optimism means that first kind, and we say, yeah, it's bad, but humans have always existed, and we'll figure it out. It'll be fine. And then you do nothing, because who's going to figure it out? Like, who's figuring what out? It's going to take a lot of miracles all lining up for us to steer a ship in a different direction. It's just that I choose to be on the side of like, yeah, let's try that. It's hard. Let's do everything we can to do that. So it's kind of like an optimism of we are down, to use a football analogy, we are down 100 points in the second quarter or something. I don't know what football is, but we're at the halftime, and the coach says, we could go home right now because we're probably going to lose. Or the coach says, we are not going down without a fight. We're going to do this, and we're going to pull everything, and here's our strategy, okay? And so that's optimism. That's the kind of optimism I like. I don't like the optimism that says, don't worry, it'll be fine. We'll win the game.
Yeah, I mean, the analogy breaks a little bit down.
Because I don't know football.
Well, and it's not a win or lose situation. It's just a matter of what's going to happen.
Sure.
And yeah, I get it, Anna. And I'm sorry that I caused anxiety. But, well, and what do I say? The science, particularly more recently, there's a major report put out that was giving us information that was at the worst end of our predictions. We're 10 years ago when we were looking at 2021, we were like, well, here's the error bars.
Right.
And it's at the worst end. The average Celsius increase globally is worse than what we thought even, and the average was bad.
Right.
The average was like crap. If the average happens in terms of global warming average wise across the world, then oh boy.
Right.
And if the average happens in terms of our inability to cut back on greenhouse gases, then oh boy, it turns out we're worse than we thought we were going to be. We're worse off than our bad predictions. So it's dire. And it's not a matter of pessimism or optimism. Those are facts. Those aren't. I'm not being a bummer. I'm pointing out facts that species are becoming extinct by the second. Oceans are going to rise, even if we turn off all of our machines, which of course is never going to happen. The temperature is going to continue to rise. There are potential extremely dire possibilities that aren't likely in the near future, but could happen. It's not like life is inevitable on this planet. I mean, it's not like humans are inevitable or society isn't inevitable. It is something that's held together by a very, thin web of dependencies that humans have on the climate, that the climate has on this, and animals have on that, and Jetstream has on this, and the ocean currents and bacteria and plants and predators. Everything is interwoven, and so now pessimism is an interesting dimension to think about. Optimism versus pessimism. Pessimistic is not what I would call myself. What I would call myself is fucking angry and disappointed and frustrated. Now, if that's interpret it as pessimism, I don't know what to say about that. Do I have faith in humans? No, I don't. There's no evidence to point to any humans having any ability as a group, as a planet, particularly international, right? Say just on the weirdest chance, because, Biden put forth his plan, which might be one of the best we could possibly get from a president, you know, and it falls way short. Greta Thunberg was like, that's a joke.
Yeah.
Because it is a joke. Because it's not, it's way far from the mark. We have to be doing way more aggressive
But
crap.
we know that nothing is going to be done significantly until it's an emergency, right?
Aren't we at that point?
No, we're not, because no one in power is directly in that emergency.
So if it's pessimistic, if that's the label that you're applying to me, pessimism versus optimism has to do with predictions of the future. I predict that I'll be happy tomorrow.
Okay, so I think that's where we disagree, but maybe we just need different words. Because think about World War II. Imagine we're in a concentration camp, or if not that dire, we are in a foxhole somewhere and we're losing, right? It's not just about, I think we're going to win. Don't worry, cheer up. We'll figure it out. That to me is the type A optimism, right? The type B, and maybe it's the optimism is the wrong word, just like you were saying, maybe pessimism. It doesn't matter. We're going to fight.
Well, and then another type of pessimism is we're doomed, why try? And at no time have I ever said that. I've said the opposite.
Well, you did actually imply that it was pointless.
It's pointless to do anything about the damage that's already done.
Uh-huh.
But we absolutely can turn this around. We are now facing it if we don't, which is a possibility. And I guess I'm pessimistic about that in 500 years, we'll be back in the hunter-gatherer times.
Well, so what's funny is these words are very interesting. I can't tell if I am more pessimistic than you or not, because I am like 99.9% convinced things are going to get disastrous worldwide for sure.
How soon?
Now. Like, it's just that.
Like what? Give me an example. Give the listeners an example.
Fires will get worse. People will be displaced. Places that are currently habitable will become inhabitable. Water is going to be not available for millions, maybe a billion people.
And they'll die because of it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And mass migrations, war, famine, the works. Not to mention, not even the opportunity, because the air will choke out a whole bunch of people, including potentially us.
So how come I'm the pessimist?
Because this is why I'm saying, like, I think the words are maybe pointless, because I'm saying, yeah, like, I agree with the science report. I think the time to do something was 100 years ago. Or let's put it this way. There was a time to reassess a lot of things about human society that we wouldn't have possessed the capability of reassessing. And that time has passed a long time ago. However, now what? And that's why I'm saying I'm the type B optimist, which is, yes, I realize we're down 1,000 points at the half. We're still going to fight. And that's the only thing that we can do.
So if we do everything we can, realistically, given your prediction of the future, what difference can we make?
One of two things. Aliens a billion years from now will find some record of this civilization that really fought to their dying breath, and they'll honor us. And they will.
They'll put a statue up.
They'll make a movie called 500 about the 500 brave humans that tried to stop that. But the second case is like, look, we have surprised ourselves, right? So there are, like I just heard last week, that Ford, their new electric truck is like the #1 selling vehicle now. So much so that they're ramping up whole new waves of hiring and opening up whole new factories.
You realize, and I'm sure you know this, that change is like a spoon in the ocean.
It sort of is, right? But at the same time, like that's Ford, an American company that makes trucks.
Yeah.
Who buys trucks, by the way? Do you have one? Do you want to pick up?
So I'm on board with you totally. We are making advances, as Boyd wrote in the book. There are we're driving down prices of solar. We're installing around the world nuclear and wind,
right,
and other types of renewable energy, hydro. And there are countries in Europe that have there's this. I was watching this documentary about these islands in the north of Scotland that have so much wind power that they have to bleed it off to the mainland Scotland, and so their entire island is completely power free on wind. So there's a future that could be. But when you look at and those examples are inspiring, and it gives us hope, and we're doing things, and people, governments are working together, and scientists are building things. And I saw a report where they developed this ocean powered, because the waves of the ocean, you can harness that energy to power a desalination plant that can, because we have a lot of water.
Yeah.
We just have a lot of salt water that you can't drink.
Right.
And you need power to desalinate the water to drink it. And so the problem with water, as you were saying before, is, with changes of temperatures, rivers are going to dry up and lakes are going to dry up. There's going to be whole swaths of people without any water. We need to start looking towards how to harness the ocean, and there's a way to not only harness the water, but also to harness the power of the waves of the ocean. And, it's possible that in 30 years, there will be plants that will be all around and will save millions of people that wouldn't get water otherwise. My point is that things are happening. But when you look at the science, things have been happening. By the way, I'm old. So one of the things that I can point to as a 50-year-old person is there has been talk and talk and talk and talk. I have been thinking about environmentalism since the mid-70s. I remember, since I grew up of that generation where we were taught in the 70s and 80s that we needed to do something.
Yeah.
And there have been talk and politicians and voting and talk and politicians and news stories and scientists. And what has been the result, Berto? Right. We have gone farther and farther down the pit of despair.
But it's the same thing with the pandemic. In February and March, there was enough information to know what needed to be done. And it wasn't done. No one wanted to do anything. And so then things got really bad. And then they got even way worse, right? Because we still didn't want to do. So I think that it's going to take a lot of death.
But to finish my point, on that analogy, does that mean I don't get the vaccine? No. Does that mean I don't promote getting the vaccine? No. Part of my strategy about sounding pessimistic or sounding scared is I want to motivate all of you to do something that you can do. Vote, become a scientist in this area, conserve, buy an electric truck. I have a platform. And when we look at George Washington, he was worshipped at the time. But when we look at him now, slave owner. When we look at President Lincoln, he was a god at the time, for some people hated, a lot of people hated him. But, soon after his death, people really liked him. We look back now, kind of a racist, there are criticisms. 100 years from now, what are they going to look at people of my generation? I guarantee you they're going to see us as the generation of idiots that destroyed the planet.
Well, that would be unfair.
At the very least, I want to say to those people 100 years from now, I tried, So the other thing is I have a platform and I can affect people. And although you, Anna, are on board and you've got the spoon out in the ocean and you're trying to turn that boat around, but a lot of listeners right now are not. And so I'm going to use my platform to bring reality, not that I have the reality, but the scientists have given me the reality and I'm passing it along so that you, the listener, can do so. I have a platform, I'm going to use it.
Right. But what if it's the Winston Churchill / Lincoln style, which is They knew. I mean, you don't think Winston Churchill knew that it was probably the end of the British Empire? They knew. But they didn't go on the air and say that, right? They went on the air and they said, we will fight. We will fight them in the shores. We will fight them in the blah, blah, blahs. We will persevere. But he was probably like, we probably won't. So I think it's a difference between, as humans, we have to make a decision. Because we're guaranteed nothing in this universe. I'm saying that you're slightly wrong in your tone. Because if people are perceiving it as pessimistic, then you're not tweaking the tone to be.
So here's the difference, people. Either things are going to be crappy or really crappy. You make the choice. That's what I'm saying.
And I'm thinking, right. And of course, you're free to say it as you want to say it.
That's what the science is saying.
But it doesn't matter. What matters is.
I'm going to lie to people?
Yeah.
We can do it.
Yeah. No. See, that's type A.
We can win.
No, that's type A. That's not what we want. We want type B. We will fight them in the shores. We will fight them to all.
That's what I just said. I just said, you, the listener, I have a platform. You're going to do something.
Skip the first part. Don't
skip
say
the reason.
Don't say we're doomed.
So I'm just supposed to come on the air and be like, by the way, everything's going to be fine, but do everything you can.
Skip both versions of the first part. You don't say everything's going to be fine.
I'm just supposed to say for no reason in particular, we have to do something.
Well,
I'm going to say,
no, you can paint the picture
for
a little bit.
reason at all. I'm begging you, the listener, to do something.
You can paint the picture a bit, but you don't say we have just lost half of England. Most of us are going to die. Like, you don't say that. You do paint the picture though of the dire enemy.
But you were the one who painted the dire picture.
Because we were having this conversation.
I haven't said anything horrible.
I hadn't said that before this. Like. I was explaining that I'm coming at it from like, no, I agree with the science and all these things. But then what? What is our take?
I'm a human being and I am looking at the data and this is how it's going through my emotional center.
Yeah.
And I'm expressing those emotions.
I'm not saying you're wrong for that.
I'm having an actual rational, I believe, a dire, disappointed, slightly depressed emotional reaction to the data.
The question is, are you trying to influence behavior? That's the only thing. And if for this topic you don't have the energy or you can't, that's fine. That's totally fine. If you're trying to influence behavior, the next question is,
you said earlier, the only time the politicians are going to do something is when it affects them.
The only time, probably, yeah.
But if we're going to get change before people are affected, we have to scare the crap out of them.
No.
I'm scared. I'm motivated.
I think that you don't have to do that. That happens already. This listener just told you they're already scared.
Then they don't need to listen to me.
Well,
they're already on the right side of history. And I completely think it's rational to stare into the darkness at night and be scared about what's going to happen in the future.
That's my analogy. You know that the people hearing the bombing were already scared. Their children are with them. They're huddled. The buildings are being collapsed. They're already scared. They don't need to listen in on the radio to someone scaring them further.
I'm not Winston Churchill. I'm scared in the bunker.
Yeah, I know.
If I were Winston Churchill, if I was Biden, I would not speak the way I am. Right. I would speak the way Churchill did during the war. I would say, we're going to do this. Here's the plan. This is what's going to happen. I would have the power to lay out the infrastructure and the plans and bring people together. I don't have that power. I'm sitting here, I'm being bombed, completely powerless like everyone else.
But you have the shortwave radio that you can say like, here, I know I don't own the planes, we're not the military, but here's the thing we as a community can do. You run this way, you do that. At night, you don't stay in this part.
And it's not always this way, I don't mope every minute of every day. But when I think about it, it's powerless. I don't trust our governments. And because even if the United States government managed to get their crap together, which I doubt would ever happen in the near future, in my lifetime, honestly, we have to depend on all the governments of the world to work together.
Yep.
Which is like, when has that ever happened? We are still kind of in a Cold War with China.
Yeah.
We're not allies with China.
Yeah.
We can't agree on simple things like if Taiwan exists, And so,
well, but the pandemic did help us a bit, right?
Yeah.
Like it made the world realize like, hey, this affects all of us.
What needs to happen is possible humanly, but there's no trend in that direction.
Well, it might not even be possible humanly. We don't know.
No,
right?
it's possible. Well, it's possible for all the humans on the planet, the governments, to say, we are going to do X, Y, and Z, and we're going to tell our people everyone's going to have to pay a price.
Yeah, but we don't know. Like, in reality, no matter which plan you put into motion, we're talking about 7 billion people with their own opinions and ideas, and look at what happens when you tell people to
but
wear
I'm just
masks.
saying, like, it's impossible. It's not like physically impossible. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, if we just decided as a collective to do this, it could happen. It's not going to.
And that's the thing. As a collective, I don't think we can. But as individuals, we can. You've already made a choice, which is, yeah, you're going to do what you can. You just feel terrible about it, which is totally understandable. I'm in kind of the same boat, which is I'm like, hell, I got to do what I can. And then I guess if I were putting a message out, it's like, yeah, let's all of us do what we can.
But the analogy that Anna says, I'm in the big boat, huge like tanker, and I've got my spoon and I'm trying to turn this thing around. I'm right there with you, Anna. I've got my spoon and I'm trying to wave people over with my podcast. Get your spoons in the water. But I look up and there's this gigantic engine being driven by our governments that we will never be able to turn this boat around until they turn us around.
But it's okay because art's bigger than that. You will be written about by the aliens, and you had a spoon in the water.
Yeah.
And that's bigger. And I really do mean that. Like, think about the things we care about. Most of those things are long dead. Like, even the Beatles, half of them are gone, but we care about it. The Egyptians are gone, and pyramids, all of it, but we care about it. So, in some ways, the poem is the more important part. Did you go out with a spoon in the water, or did you not? You know, I think there's some similarities to the Burnham. You know how I reacted to his making fun of suicide?
Uh-huh.
And do you know how people reacted to me reacting that way?
What'd they say?
Well, they were against my reaction, let's say.
Okay.
I don't remember the specifics, but they were very against my reaction. And I was against his reaction.
In the comment section of YouTube?
Yeah. I was against his approach to it, and they were against my reaction to his approach. But to your point, it's like, well, his approach to it is how he deals with it. My reaction to his approach is my reaction to his approach. And their reaction to my reaction is their reaction. So we're all entitled to our approaches and reactions. The only thing that I was saying was, it does matter what you're hoping to accomplish and whether you're accomplishing it or not. And that's really up to you to evaluate and decide. You know, that's, but it's sort of independent, or maybe it's orthogonal to how you're reacting and feeling. Like, you, to your point,
yeah,
no one should be able to tell you how to feel. And so to get really, really dark, that's what I briefly mentioned the concentration camp. I don't want to spend much time there because I really am in no position to talk about it, except you could have imagined similar situations where some people were acknowledging the brutal reality of the situation and were basically done. And other people were just trying to keep living and being positive or something.
Yeah. I mean, Viktor Frankl, famous, Man's Search for Meaning, was in Auschwitz and saw everyone in his family die, his wife, his parents, so many people around him. And he saw that for some, when they gave up, they physically would die.
Yeah.
The demoralization led to perhaps physiological changes that essentially they didn't have a will to live anymore.
But they must have been asking him or others, how the heck are you not demoralized? Like,
he had a belief that he was going to live. He had a belief that he was going to get out and he was going to be able to write about his experiences.
That's an irrational belief.
I mean, yeah, and what he believes is that belief kept him alive. What I would say is there were thousands of other people who also believed they were going to get out and got shot and killed or went to the gas chamber. So it's not, you just happen to live.
Yeah.
But the lesson is still fine, I think, which is essentially his idea was, it translates to all of us, which is life is suffering.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of things out of our control, and we can just give up and just be a leaf in the wind and be miserable. Or we can say, well, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And 100%, I'm not giving up. Yep. I'm doing more because of my demoralization. I'm like, well, got to start somewhere. It's a huge ocean, one spoon of water, one at a time. And that's what I'm doing anyway. Well, that does it for that episode of Psychology in Seattle. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself. Keep your spoons in the water because
you deserve it.